The streets of New Dawn City were eerily silent, the usual hum of life replaced by the oppressive stillness of fear. Ash drifted through the air like snow, coating the rubble of once proud buildings. The sky, choked with smoke and debris, was a perpetual gray, casting the city in a twilight that seemed to stretch forever. Sergeant Maya Torres crouched behind the remnants of a shattered wall, her rifle clutched tightly in her hands. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her breathing was steady, a testament to years of training and the sheer force of her will. Around her, the last remnants of her unit moved silently, their faces grim but resolute. Movement on the north side. Came the whisper over her comm. It was Private Lien, his voice tense but controlled. 2 scouts. Looks like they're searching for survivors. Maya's jaw tightened. Hold position, she replied. Let them come to us. The enemy, the Zauran Dominion, was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. They were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They didn't demand submission or resources. They came to exterminate, to wipe the slate clean for reasons humanity could only guess at. Their technology was decades, if not centuries, ahead of Earth's. Their ships blackened the skies, their machines rendered cities to dust, and their soldiers, tall, insectoid creatures with armor like living metal, were merciless and unrelenting. But humanity wasn't finished. Not yet. The Zauran scouts moved with an unsettling grace, their limbs clicking softly against the ground as they advanced. Their heads, insectoid and angular, swiveled as they scanned their surroundings. They carried weapons that seemed to pulse with energy, their forms shimmering faintly as if wrapped in a field of shifting light. Maya waited, her finger resting lightly on the trigger. Timing was everything. The resistance didn't have the luxury of firefights. Every bullet, every grenade, every action had to count. The Zauran didn't expect much from humans anymore. That was their mistake. The first scout stepped into the kill zone, and Maya gave the signal. 3 sharp bursts of gunfire shattered the silence, the bullets punching through the shimmering field and into the scout's chest. It let out a high-pitched shriek, collapsing to the ground in a heap. The second scout reacted instantly, raising its weapon as it turned toward the source of the gunfire. But before it could fire, Lien emerged from the shadows, driving a combat knife into the exposed joint of its neck. The scout spasmed and fell, its body twitching before going still. Clear, Maya said, rising from her position. Her unit moved quickly, scavenging what they could from the fallen scouts. Zauran technology was difficult to use, its design alien and often incomprehensible, but the resistance had learned to make do. Every piece of tech they captured was another small advantage in a war of survival. We can't stay here, Lien said, his voice low. If they don't report back, their patrol will come looking. Maya nodded. We move in 5. Check the perimeter and regroup. The unit dispersed, their movements efficient and practiced. Maya allowed herself a brief moment to survey the ruins around her. This was what remained of humanity's once thriving cities, shattered husks filled with fear and desperation. But even in the face of annihilation, there was resistance. There was always resistance. Sergeant, another voice came over the comm. It was Lieutenant Aaron Sharp, their commanding officer, speaking from the Resistance's hidden base deep beneath the city. We've picked up chatter on the Zauran comms. They're shifting their patrol routes. I think they're on to you. Understood, Maya replied. We're extracting now. Be careful out there, Aaron said. We can't afford to lose anyone else. Maya didn't need the reminder. Every loss was a wound, not just to the Resistance, but to her personally. She had buried too many friends, too many comrades. But she also knew the stakes. If they didn't fight, there wouldn't be anything left to save. As the unit regrouped and prepared to move, Maya caught sight of something in the distance, a faint glimmer of light against the gray horizon. At first, she thought it was just a reflection, but then it moved, growing brighter with each passing second. Incoming, she shouted, diving for cover just as the ground where she had been standing erupted in a burst of energy. The Zauran patrol had found them. The next few moments were chaos. Energy blasts tore through the air, their impact throwing up clouds of dust and debris. Maya fired back, her shots precise despite the chaos. Her unit moved as one, their training and experience turning the ambush into a coordinated retreat. Fall back to the rendezvous point, Maya ordered. Go, go, go. The unit moved through the ruins, using the terrain to their advantage. The Zauran pursued, their movements relentless, but the Resistance fighters knew the city better. They led their pursuers into narrow alleys and through collapsed buildings, creating choke points and setting traps. By the time they reached the rendezvous point, a hidden entrance to the underground base, the Zauran patrol was in disarray. Explosions echoed behind them as the last of their traps detonated, buying them precious seconds. Inside now, Maya barked, covering the rear as her unit scrambled into the tunnel. Once everyone was through, she hit the detonator, collapsing the entrance behind them. them. The sound of the explosion reverberated through the tunnel, followed by an eerie silence. For a moment, no one spoke. The unit was alive, but barely. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, their bodies battered and bruised, but they had survived. And in this war, survival was a victory in itself. Maya allowed herself a moment to breathe before addressing her team. "Good work out there," she said. "We'll debrief with command and figure out our next move. Get some rest. You've earned it." As the unit dispersed, Maya leaned against the tunnel wall, exhaustion washing over her. She closed her eyes, the weight of the war pressing down on her shoulders. But even in her fatigue, she knew one thing for certain. The Zalran didn't expect humans to fight back, but they would learn. They would learn the hard way. The underground base was a maze of tunnels and chambers carved into the bedrock beneath New Dawn City. It was the nerve center of the resistance, a place where humans could regroup, plan, and fight back. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and machinery, the walls illuminated by the dim glow of improvised lights. Maya walked through the base, her steps heavy but purposeful. Around her, resistance fighters worked tirelessly, repairing equipment, treating the wounded, and preparing for the next battle. Every face she passed bore the same expression, a mix of exhaustion and determination. She made her way to the command center, a cavernous room filled with maps, monitors, and communication equipment. Lieutenant Aaron Sharp stood at the center, his brow furrowed as he studied a holographic map of the city. He looked up as Maya entered, his expression softening. "Glad you made it back," he said. "We were starting to worry." Maya offered a faint smile. "We had a close call, but we got what we needed." She handed him a small device, the Zalran tech her team had scavenged. "Maybe this will give us an edge." Aaron examined the device, his fingers tracing its alien contours. "I'll get the tech team on it right away. If we can figure out how this works, it could be a game changer." As Aaron passed the device to a technician, Maya turned her attention to the map. It displayed the city and its surrounding areas, marked with red and blue icons representing Zalran and resistance positions. "They're closing in," she said, her voice low. "We can't keep playing defense. If we don't start hitting them where it hurts, they'll grind us down." Aaron nodded, his expression grim. "We've been discussing that. There's a Zalran supply depot on the outskirts of the city. It's heavily guarded, but if we can take it out, we'll cripple their operations in this sector." Maya studied the map, her mind racing. "We'll need a diversion," she said. "Something to draw their attention away from the depot." "We're already working on it," Aaron said. "But I'll be honest with you, Maya. This mission is high risk. If we fail, it'll cost us more than we can afford." "Then we won't fail," Maya said firmly. "We can't afford to." The mission was set into motion with a level of precision born from desperation. The resistance fighters knew the stakes, and they moved with the focus of people who had everything to lose. Maya led the strike team tasked with infiltrating the depot. They moved under the cover of darkness, their path illuminated only by the faint glow of the city's fires. The air was tense, every sound amplified in the silence. As they approached the depot, the scale of their task became clear. The facility was massive, its perimeter guarded by Zalran soldiers and automated turrets. Beyond the walls, rows of alien machinery and supplies glowed faintly, their purpose unknown but undoubtedly crucial to the enemy's war effort. "We're in position," Maya whispered into her calm, diversion team. "You're up." A few moments later, a series of explosions lit up the night sky on the far side of the city. The Zalran guards reacted immediately, their attention drawn to the commotion. Maya and her team used the distraction to move closer, slipping through a gap in the perimeter. Inside the depot, the atmosphere was electric. The team moved quickly, planting charges on key structures and machinery. Every second felt like an eternity, the risk of discovery hanging over them like a shadow. "Charges are set," one of the fighters reported. "We're ready to blow this place sky high." Maya nodded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Fall back to the extraction point. We'll detonate once we're clear." The team moved as one, their retreat calculated and efficient. But as they neared the perimeter, an alarm blared, its piercing wail shattering the silence. "We've been made," Maya shouted. "Move!" The Zalran guards converged on their position, their weapons lighting up the darkness. Maya fired back, her shots precise and controlled. The resistance fighters fought with everything they had, their determination turning the retreat into a fierce battle. By the time they reached the extraction point, their numbers had dwindled. Maya activated the detonator, and the depot erupted in a massive explosion that lit up the sky like a second sunrise. The shockwave rattled the ground, and the air was filled with the roar of destruction. "We did it," one of the fighters said, their voice filled with a mix of relief and disbelief. "We're not out of this yet," Maya said, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Stay sharp. They'll be coming for us." The team returned to the base, battered but victorious. The destruction of the depot was a significant blow to the Zalran, but it was also a stark reminder of the cost of their resistance. Every victory came with a price, and the losses weighed heavily on Maya's heart. In the days that followed, the resistance regrouped and planned their next move. The victory had given them a glimmer of hope, but the war was far from over. The Zalran would adapt, and the fight would only get harder. But for now, they had shown the enemy something they would not forget. Humanity was not defeated. They were still fighting, and as long as they drew breath, they would continue to resist. The destruction of the Zalran supply depot rippled through the city like an electric charge. The resistance fighters felt a renewed sense of purpose, their victory proof that the Zalran were not invincible. But the cost of that success was etched into every face, every quiet moment shared between soldiers who had seen too much. Maya stood in the infirmary, her gaze fixed on one of the cots where Private Lien lay unconscious. The medics worked tirelessly around him, their hands moving with practiced precision. Lien had taken a direct hit during the retreat, his armor barely holding together. He had survived, but only just. Aaron appeared beside her, his expression unreadable. "He's tough," he said, his voice low. "He'll pull through." Maya nodded, but the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. "I should have seen it coming," she said. "The alarm, the guards, it was too easy." "You can't blame yourself," Aaron said. "We knew the risks going in, and we got the job done. That depot was critical to their operations. We've bought ourselves time." "At what cost?" Maya murmured. She turned to face him, her eyes hard. "I can't keep losing people, Aaron. Not like this." Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm but comforting. "You're not losing them for nothing," he said. "Every loss, every sacrifice, it means something. We're still here because of them, because of you." Maya looked away, her jaw tightening. She hated the weight of leadership, the constant calculation of lives versus outcomes. But she also knew Aaron was right. They couldn't afford to stop. Not now. The Resistance's next move was critical. With the Zalran scrambling to recover from the loss of their depot, the window of opportunity was narrow. Intelligence reports suggested that the Zalran were consolidating their forces at a central command hub deep within the city. If the Resistance could disrupt their operations there, it would cripple their ability to coordinate the occupation. The plan was ambitious, bordering on reckless. The command hub was heavily fortified, its defenses designed to withstand even the most determined assault. But the Resistance had something the Zalran didn't expect: ingenuity and the element of surprise. Maya and Aaron spent hours poring over maps and schematics, their discussions punctuated by moments of tense silence. The pressure was immense, the stakes higher than ever. Every decision felt like a gamble, and the weight of it pressed heavily on them both. "We'll need to divide our forces," Maya said, tracing a path on the map. "A small team will infiltrate the hub and plant charges on their main systems. The rest will create a diversion, drawing their forces away from the target." "It's risky," Aaron said. "If the infiltration team gets caught, they're on their own." "I know," Maya said, her voice steady, "but it's the only way. We have to hit them where it hurts." The Resistance fighters prepared for the mission with grim determination. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. Every detail was planned with meticulous care, every contingency considered. But even the best-laid plans couldn't account for everything. The night of the mission, the city was shrouded in darkness. The Resistance fighters moved like shadows, their movements silent and deliberate. Maya led the infiltration team, her senses sharp, every nerve on edge. As they approached the command hub, the scale of the operation became clear. The facility was a fortress, its walls bristling with turrets and sensors. Maya's heart pounded, but her focus didn't waver. "Team Alpha in position," she whispered into her comm. "Diversion team, you're up." A series of explosions erupted in the distance, their echoes reverberating through the city. The Zalran guards reacted immediately, their attention drawn to the commotion. Maya and her team used the distraction to slip through a maintenance tunnel, their path illuminated by the faint glow of emergency lights. Inside the hub, the tension was palpable. The team moved quickly, planting charges on key systems and uploading a virus to the Zalran's network. Every second felt like an eternity, the risk of discovery hanging over them like a shadow. "Charges set," one of the fighters reported. "We're ready to exfil." But just as they prepared to leave, an alarm blared, its piercing wail shattering the silence. "We've been made," Maya shouted. Defensive positions. The Zalran guards converged on their location, their movements swift and coordinated. The firefight that followed was chaos, the air filled with the sound of gunfire and energy blasts. Maya fought with everything she had, her focus razor-sharp despite the odds. "We need to move." Aaron's voice crackled over the comm. "Diversion team is taking heavy fire. You're running out of time. Hold your position," Maya replied, her voice firm. "We're not leaving without finishing the job. The battle raged on, every moment a test of their resolve. The charges were armed, the virus uploaded, but the cost was steep. By the time the team reached the extraction point, their numbers had dwindled, and the weight of their losses was crushing. Maya activated the detonator, and the command hub erupted in a massive explosion that lit up the night sky. The shockwave was deafening, the destruction absolute. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. Back at the base, the mood was somber. The resistance had struck a critical blow, but the cost was undeniable. Maya stood in the command center, her gaze fixed on the map as Aaron approached. "You did it," he said, his voice soft. "They'll feel this one." Maya didn't look at him. "At what cost?" she murmured. "How many more missions like this can we survive?" Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression filled with quiet determination. "As many as it takes," he said, "because every time we fight back, we show them that we're not broken, that we're not afraid." Maya nodded, her resolve hardening. The fight was far from over, but as long as they drew breath, they would keep resisting. Because the Zalran didn't expect humans to fight back, but they were learning, and humanity was just getting started. The days following the destruction of the Zalran command hub were a blur of activity. The resistance worked tirelessly to capitalize on their victory, launching small-scale raids and ambushes to disrupt the enemy's recovery efforts. Every skirmish, every act of defiance, was a reminder to the Zalran that humanity would not go quietly. But for Maya, the weight of the war pressed heavier than ever. She carried the faces of every fallen soldier in her heart, their memories a constant reminder of the cost of their resistance. She found solace in the moments of quiet, the rare lulls in the chaos where she could catch her breath and remember why they were fighting. One evening, as she sat on the edge of a makeshift bunk in the dimly lit barracks, Aaron entered, his expression somber. "You've been avoiding me," he said, his voice tinged with concern. Maya glanced up, her exhaustion evident. "Just needed some space," she replied. "What's on your mind?" Aaron hesitated, then sat beside her. "We intercepted some chatter on the Zalran comms. They're planning something big. We don't have the full picture yet, but whatever it is, it's not good." Maya frowned, her mind racing. "Do we have any leads?" "Just one," Aaron said. "They've fortified a location near the city's outskirts. Our scouts say it's heavily guarded, more so than anything we've seen before. If I had to guess, it's a staging ground for their next move." Maya's jaw tightened. "Then we hit it before they can use it." "It won't be easy," Aaron warned. "Their defenses are stronger than anything we've encountered. This won't be like the depot or the hub. If we go in, we have to be prepared for the worst." Maya nodded, her resolve hardening. "We've come too far to back down now. Get the team ready. We move at first light." The preparation for the assault was unlike anything the resistance had undertaken before. Every fighter, every resource was mobilized. The tension was palpable, the weight of the mission pressing down on everyone involved. As the sun rose over the ruins of New Dawn City, the resistance forces gathered in the shadows, their faces grim but determined. Maya stood before them, her presence commanding despite the exhaustion etched into her features. "We've been fighting for this moment," she began, her voice steady but fierce. "The Zalran came here expecting to crush us, to erase us. But we've shown them that humanity doesn't break. Today, we show them that we don't just survive, we fight. We resist, and we win." A ripple of determination swept through the crowd, their resolve solidifying in the face of the impossible. As Maya finished her speech, she raised her weapon. The gesture met with a chorus of cheers. The assault began with a coordinated strike on the Zalran perimeter defenses. Explosions lit up the dawn, the sound of gunfire echoing across the city. The resistance fighters moved with precision, their years of training and experience turning them into a force to be reckoned with. Maya led the charge, her rifle cutting through the chaos as she pushed forward. Every step was a battle, every moment a test of their resolve. The Zalran fought back with a ferocity born of desperation, their forces struggling to contain the human assault. As the resistance breached the outer defenses, they encountered the full scale of the Zalran's operation. The staging ground was massive, a sprawling complex filled with alien machinery and weapons. It was clear that this was more than just a base. It was a launching point for a full-scale offensive. "This is bigger than we thought," Aaron said over the comm. "If we don't take this place out, we're finished. Then we don't stop until it's done," Maya replied. "Focus on the objectives. We can't afford to miss a single target." The resistance fighters pressed on, their determination unwavering despite the odds. They planted charges on key structures, disrupted enemy communications, and engaged in brutal close-quarters combat. Every second was a fight for survival, every action a step closer to victory. But as the battle raged, the cost became clear. The Zalran's defenses were formidable, their counterattacks relentless. Maya watched as comrades fell around her, their sacrifices fueling her determination. She knew they couldn't afford to fail. Not now, not when they were so close. The turning point came when Maya and a small team infiltrated the central command center. The room was filled with alien technology, its walls lined with holographic displays and pulsating lights. At the center stood a Zauran commander, its imposing form radiating authority. "You've come far, human," the commander said, its voice a low, resonant growl. "But your resistance is futile. You cannot win." Maya leveled her rifle, her gaze unflinching. "Maybe not," she said, "but we can make you bleed." The firefight that followed was brutal and chaotic. Maya and her team fought with everything they had, their movements coordinated and precise. The Zauran commander was a formidable opponent, its weaponry and tactics pushing them to their limits. But in the end, humanity's ingenuity and determination prevailed. As the commander fell, Maya activated the charges, the countdown ticking away as they fought their way out of the complex. The final explosion was massive, a thunderous roar that shook the earth and lit up the sky. The resistance had done it. They had struck a blow that would cripple the Zaurans' plans and give humanity a fighting chance. Back at the base, the mood was a mix of triumph and sorrow. The victory was undeniable, but the losses were staggering. Maya stood before her team, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "We did this together," she said. "Every sacrifice, every loss, it wasn't for nothing. We've shown the Zauran that we're not afraid, that we won't back down. And as long as we stand together, we'll keep fighting." The cheers that followed were loud and fierce, a testament to the unbreakable spirit of humanity. And as Maya looked out at her team, she felt a spark of hope, a belief that, no matter how dark the future seemed, they would find a way to endure. Because the Zauran didn't expect humans to fight back. But they were learning, and humanity was far from finished. In the weeks following the assault on the Zauran staging ground, the resistance began to see the cracks forming in their enemies' seemingly unshakable dominance. Communications intercepted from Zauran command indicated growing frustration among their leadership. The humans were no longer seen as scattered survivors, they had become a legitimate threat. For Maya, the victory was a turning point, but it came with a cost that haunted her every step. The faces of those who had fallen were etched into her memory, their voices echoing in her dreams. She carried their sacrifices with her, using them as fuel to push forward, even when the weight felt unbearable. One evening, as she sat alone in the command center, Aaron approached, his expression cautious. "You should rest," he said, his voice gentle. "You've been running on fumes since the attack." Maya shook her head, her eyes fixed on the holographic map in front of her. "I can't," she said. "Not when there's still so much to do." Aaron sighed, pulling up a chair beside her. "The team needs you at your best," he said, "and that means taking care of yourself." "I can't stop," Maya said, her voice cracking. "If I do, I'm afraid I'll fall apart." Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip steady. "You're not alone in this," he said. "We're all here because of you, but you don't have to carry it all by yourself." His words struck a chord, and Maya allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. She leaned back in her chair, her exhaustion evident. "Sometimes I wonder if it's enough," she admitted. "If anything we do will ever be enough." Aaron's expression softened. "It's enough because we keep going," he said. "Because we refuse to give up. That's what makes us different from them." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert. The holographic map flickered, displaying a new development, one that sent a chill through Maya's veins. The Zauran were regrouping, their forces massing in the outer sectors of the city. Reports indicated that they were preparing for a full-scale assault, one that would target the Resistance's strongest positions. "They're trying to crush us in one move," Aaron said, his tone grim. Maya's mind raced, her exhaustion forgotten. "Then we make our stand," she said. "If they want to bring the fight to us, we'll show them what humanity is capable of." The Resistance mobilized with a level of urgency and determination that Maya had never seen before. Fighters from across the city rallied to their cause, their numbers bolstered by civilians who refused to stand by any longer. Engineers reinforced their defenses, medics prepared for the inevitable influx of wounded, and strategists worked tirelessly to anticipate the Zaurans' moves. The final battle was unlike anything the Resistance had faced before. The Zauran came with overwhelming force, their machines of war lighting up the night sky with devastating precision. But the Resistance fought back with a ferocity that took their enemy by surprise. Every street, every building became a battleground. The Resistance used the city itself as a weapon, turning its ruins into traps and its shadows into ambush points. Maya led from the front, her presence a rallying point for her fighters. As the battle raged, Maya found herself face to face with a Zauran commander, a towering figure clad in sleek, otherworldly armor. Its voice was a deep, resonant growl as it addressed her. "You've You fight for a doomed species, it said. Your resistance is nothing more than a fleeting ember. It will be extinguished. Maya raised her weapon, her gaze unflinching. Maybe, she said, but even an ember can start a fire. Their clash was brutal, a desperate struggle that tested the limits of Maya's endurance. She fought with everything she had, her movements driven by sheer determination. The commander was a formidable opponent, its strength and speed surpassing anything she had encountered before. But Maya's ingenuity and tenacity proved to be the deciding factor. When the dust settled, the Zauran forces were in disarray. Their offensive had been thwarted, their ranks shattered. The resistance had achieved the impossible. They had turned back the tide of their enemy's might. The aftermath of the battle was both triumphant and sobering. The resistance had won a decisive victory, but the cost was staggering. The streets were littered with the debris of war, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. As the survivors gathered to regroup, Maya addressed them, her voice carrying above the chaos. Today, we showed them that humanity will not be broken, she said. We've proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, we can stand together and fight. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning. As long as we draw breath, we will resist, and we will prevail. Her words ignited a spark of hope among the fighters, their cheers echoing through the ruins. The Zauran had underestimated humanity's resilience, and they had paid the price. But Maya knew that the fight was far from over. The resistance had shown the galaxy what it meant to stand against tyranny, to fight for survival with everything they had. And as long as there was even one person willing to resist, humanity's light would continue to shine. Because the Zauran didn't expect humans to fight back. But now they would never forget. In the quiet that followed the battle, the ruins of New Dawn City became a symbol of humanity's defiance. The streets, once filled with fear and despair, now echoed with the sounds of rebuilding. Civilians and resistance fighters worked side by side, their efforts driven by the shared determination to reclaim what had been lost. Maya stood atop a crumbling building, her gaze sweeping across the city. The scars of war were everywhere, but so too were the signs of resilience. Children played in the shadows of shattered skyscrapers, their laughter a stark contrast to the devastation around them. Families rebuilt their homes, their hands working tirelessly to create something new from the ruins. Aaron joined her, his expression a mix of pride and exhaustion. They're starting to believe again, he said, in themselves, in each other. Maya nodded, her voice quiet. They're stronger than they know, she said. Stronger than any of us thought. Aaron studied her for a moment before speaking. You did this, Maya. You gave them hope. She shook her head, her gaze distant. It wasn't just me, she said. It was all of us. Every fighter, every civilian, every life lost. It was all of us. The days turned into weeks, and the resistance began to grow. News of their victory spread beyond Earth, reaching other worlds that had fallen under the Zauran's control. Messages of solidarity and support poured in, some from distant colonies, others from alien species who had suffered under the Dominion's rule. One such message came from the Arath, a technologically advanced but reclusive race that had long avoided conflict. Their emissary, a tall, willowy figure with translucent skin and glowing eyes, arrived at the resistance base with an offer of alliance. We have watched your struggle with great interest, the emissary said, their voice melodic and calm. Your resilience is inspiring. We wish to stand with you, to share our knowledge and resources in the fight against the Dominion. The alliance with the Arath marked a turning point for the resistance. Their advanced technology and strategic expertise gave humanity a critical edge, allowing them to expand their operations beyond Earth. For the first time, the Zauran found themselves on the defensive, their forces stretched thin as the resistance launched coordinated strikes across multiple sectors. Maya, now a symbol of humanity's defiance, became a reluctant leader of the growing alliance. She traveled to distant worlds, forging bonds with leaders and inspiring those who had lost hope. Her presence was a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, unity and courage could prevail. But despite the victories, Maya never forgot the cost of their struggle. She carried the memories of every life lost, every sacrifice made, as a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. It was this burden that kept her grounded, her resolve unshaken even in the darkest moments. One evening, as she walked through the Resistance's new command center, a sprawling facility built into the mountains of a liberated colony, she found herself drawn to a small memorial that had been erected in honor of the fallen. The names etched into the stone were a stark reminder of the price they had paid. They would be proud of what we've accomplished, Aaron said, joining her at the memorial. Maya nodded, her voice quiet. But it's not enough, she said. Not yet. Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder. It will be, he said, because of you, because of all of us. The final phase of the Resistance's plan was ambitious, bordering on impossible. battle. They aimed to strike at the heart of the Zauran Dominion, a massive orbital station that served as the central hub of their operations. It was a fortress in every sense of the word, its defenses impenetrable and its significance unmatched. The mission required months of preparation, every detail meticulously planned. The Alliance pooled their resources, their brightest minds working together to develop a strategy that could succeed where none had before. When the day of the assault finally arrived, the stakes were clear. This was more than a battle, it was a statement, a declaration that humanity and its allies would not bow to tyranny. The battle that followed was the largest the galaxy had ever seen. Fleets clashed in the void, their weapons lighting up the darkness in a dazzling display of destruction. On the station itself, resistance fighters engaged in brutal close-quarters combat, their determination pushing them to the brink. Maya led the ground assault, her voice cutting through the chaos as she directed her team. Every step was a fight, every moment a test of their resolve. But even as the odds seemed insurmountable, they pressed on, driven by the belief that this was their moment. The turning point came when Maya and her team reached the station's control center. The Zauran commander, a towering figure adorned in ceremonial armor, stood between them and their goal. "You have come far, human," the commander said, its voice filled with disdain. "But this is where your defiance ends." Maya leveled her weapon, her gaze unflinching. "You don't understand humans very well," she said. "This is where it begins." The clash that followed was brutal and unrelenting. Maya fought with every ounce of strength she had, her movements precise and calculated. The commander was a formidable opponent, its power and skill pushing her to her limits. But in the end, it was humanity's ingenuity and determination that prevailed. As the station systems began to collapse, Maya activated the charges they had planted, the countdown ticking away as they fought their way to the extraction point. The final explosion was massive, a blinding flash of light that marked the end of the Zauran's dominance. Back on Earth, the celebrations were bittersweet. The resistance had achieved the impossible, but the cost was staggering. Maya stood before the gathered crowd, her voice carrying above the cheers and tears. "This victory is not the end," she said. "It is a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, to heal, to create a future where no one lives in fear. We did this together, and together we will continue to fight for what is right." As the crowd erupted in applause, Maya allowed herself a rare moment of hope. The Zauran had underestimated humanity, but they would never make that mistake again, because the resistance had shown the galaxy what it meant to fight back. And as long as there was even one ember of hope, humanity's light would continue to shine. In the months that followed the fall of the Zauran orbital station, the galaxy began to change. The Dominion's once unyielding grip was shattered, its remaining forces retreating to the farthest edges of known space. For the first time in generations, oppressed worlds began to breathe freely, their people reclaiming their lives and futures. The Alliance, now a beacon of hope for countless species, turned its focus to rebuilding. Human engineers and Arath technicians worked side by side to repair the damage done by the war, their combined efforts creating advancements that would shape the galaxy for years to come. Diplomatic councils were formed, bringing together leaders from across the stars to ensure that such a conflict would never arise again. For Maya, the transition from war to peace was both liberating and unsettling. She had spent so much of her life fighting that the prospect of a future without conflict felt almost foreign. But as she traveled from world to world, meeting with those whose lives had been changed by the resistance, she began to see the impact of their efforts. On a lush, newly liberated colony world, Maya stood before a gathering of children, their wide eyes filled with curiosity and wonder. She told them stories of the resistance, of the bravery and sacrifice that had brought them to this moment. Their laughter and questions reminded her of the very future they had fought to protect. "What happens now?" one child asked, their voice filled with innocence. Maya smiled, her gaze softening. "Now, we build a galaxy where everyone can live without fear," she said. "And it starts with all of you." The moment stayed with her as she returned to New Dawn City, now a thriving hub of activity and innovation. The scars of war were still visible, but they had become part of the city's story, a reminder of the strength and resilience of its people. Aaron greeted her at the newly constructed council building, his expression filled with quiet pride. "They're ready for you," he said. Maya hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She stepped into the council chamber, where representatives from dozens of worlds awaited her. The room was filled with a sense of possibility, the weight of history pressing down on every decision they would make. As Maya took her place at the head of the table, she felt a sense of purpose unlike anything she had known before. The fight was far from over, but it had changed. It was no longer about survival, it was about building a future worth fighting for. She addressed the council with the same conviction that had carried her through the darkest days of the war. "We have proven that unity is our greatest strength," she said. "Now, we must ensure that this unity endures. Together, we will create a galaxy where no one lives in fear, where every voice is heard, and where hope shines brighter than any shadow." The room erupted in applause, a chorus of voices from across the stars affirming their commitment to the vision she had laid out. And as Maya looked around the chamber, she felt a spark of hope that had once seemed impossible. Because the Zauren hadn't just underestimated humanity's ability to fight, they had underestimated its capacity to inspire, to endure, and to build. And as long as there were stars in the sky, humanity's light would continue to shine, a beacon of hope for all who looked to the heavens. The galaxy was forever changed, not by the might of its weapons or the power of its armies, but by the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be broken. And as Maya stepped out into the sunlight, the sound of laughter and life filling the air, she knew that the story of the resistance was far from over. It was just the beginning.